Hey, welcome back YouTube. Thank you for joining again. On the last video, you seen the result of the frame paint. Now it's cabin time today. This is the inside of the facility of Bury Down Paint, the industrial side where I got my material for the frame and the cabin. So they're expert on AkzoNobel Devo coatings, AkzoNobel International coatings, and AkzoNobel Chemcraft wood coatings. So they're one of the largest distributor in Canada in regards industrial coatings. So thanks again, Matt and your team. Well done. So this is the spare frame rack. It's going to be mounted on the top, so I'm not losing space on the floor. This is for my two jacks, and that is the jack that I'm using on both sides in case I have a flat tire or so. I don't anticipate any because I got new tires on there. The bottom of the original cabin was a little bit damaged, and there was some part that was rusted on the metal sheet. So I cut what was rusted and caulk from inside, and then re-sheet 24 inches from the bottom. So this is actually the process. I make sure that everything's aligned and it keeps the straight line of the screws on the cabin. So this way it looks OEM, not just a repair. So I'm utilizing a square ruler and then a spacer for my space between each screws. Here's the final result. You notice that I have flipped the side under the checker plate. This way it's a nicer finish and more sturdy. This is a picture of the flooring. The flooring, I created a water drainage management system. There's some groove that I've done with my router in the floor, V grooves with the main channel in the center, about 3/8 deep of an inch, and this conduct everything to a drain. The reason why trailers are actually rusting, it's because the water has no way to get out, right? So in regards to the flooring, when you pull in your snowmobile, it's full of ice and snow, and it's going to melt in your trailer regardless if it's cold or not. Your machine is hot, so that's going to drain through that drain that we install. I took the opportunity to caulk every seam. This way, when the water falls on the OEM paint, for instance, as you see now, it's going to hit the caulking bead and not go between those two metal sheets. It's going to go on top of it, which is going to avoid rusting from inside out. The roof was quite oxidized, to be honest, and I don't think there's any coating there, or if there's some, it's been heated by the sun. So I'm sending it back so I can go almost to bare substrate with 80 grit sandpaper. Then we're going to clean it up, and 2 coats of epoxy is going to go on top. This is the first epoxy coat that went over the prepare surface. Another one is coming. And then we're going to put 2 coats of polyaspartic urethane on top of the 2 epoxies. So my dad is now screwing back all the screws. Make sure there's no loose screws on the trailer. They're all tight, because once I'm going to prime it 2 coats with epoxy and then 2 coats with the polyaspartic, I don't want to break the seam of the coating that's going to be around the screws. So might as well screw them back in now than later, and then break the coating seams. So the cabin was all prepped. Obviously the OEM paint on the white sheet and the OEM paint on the black metal sheet was sanded with 220 grit. Everything was sanded down and then cleaned a couple of times with the grease and wax remover, and also final wipe solvent before painting. So it's a long process, but it's well worth it, and I was able to remove quite a bit of damage or defects that you could see just by sanding, so it's smoother for primer and top coat. I make sure to go over the screws. This way there's going to be adhesion for the primer and the top coat. With a wire brush grinder, I'm actually just removing oxidation from the checker plate, aluminum checker plate, so the paint can stick to it. The brush is creating quite a pattern deep in the aluminum checker plate, so I should have no problem with the adhesion. Once it's prepared and cleaned up, now it's ready for epoxy primer. The same epoxy I've used on the frame and everywhere else. This is what I'm going to use to prime twice every part that goes back on the trailer. Well, this is the first coat on the fenders, and then I'm going to do the cabin, and then all the hinges parts that goes back on the trailer to close the doors. They were pretty messy and rusty. So by grinding them down with 80 grit paper and wire brush, we brought them back quite nicely. And now we're going to do the second primer coat on them as well. So here's the application. First coat of the epoxy primer. It's speed up, as you can see. It's not coming out of the gun that fast, but for the purpose of the video, I didn't want to go over 20 minutes, so I speed up the processes and showing just one side in the front because the rest is the same process. Very good hiding on these primers. They're amazing. So after the first coat of epoxy primer, I sanded back everything with 320, and we used, the first cleanup was wax and grease remover, and now we are at the stage of the final wipe. And the final wipe makes sure that has no residue on the surface, so there's a perfect bond between the two epoxy coats, and also between the epoxy coat and the polyaspartate. This is a little bit tedious process. You know, you clean it once, clean it twice, you look at your rag, and when there's no leftover on your rag, you know you're cleaned. Otherwise, you continue. I don't want any contaminant to cause any issues between my coats. I'm doing this trailer for 15-20 years without touching it, so I want to do it right. Same thing on the door. Clean it all up. This way it's going to stick very well, and no risk of fisheye or any contamination. When you do clean up like that, change your rag often. Don't use your rag and removing dust and then reapplying dust. I did one pass, flip again, then change the paper. These are the hinges that close the door. They already add one epoxy primer, so now we're moving on the second epoxy primer on everything else. So the fender, the hinges, the cabin, the tires should get a second coat. The roof was already done. I always started with the roof because the roof is applied by roller. I didn't want to spray that close to the ceiling, so that's why I applied them with the roof with a roller coat. Second epoxy on the parts and the tires. I mean, these tires are done. They're going to the scrap now, so that's why it was the right timing to spray the tire without having to mask everything, because they're gonna have a brand new set of tires on it in a couple of weeks. So Application of the polyaspartic on the roof was done with a roller. It works very well. I mean, wow, I could have roll coat the entire cabin if I wanted to, because it flows nice and it's very beautiful. Clean up my mess. I hit the roof. There's not much room there. It looks like there's a lot with the camera, but there's about 18 inches, maybe 20 at the most. So I mean, there was no room for me to go up there with my spray gun and without fuming all my light system and obviously the ceiling. So first coat of polyaspartic over the tire were done, and now I'm doing the second because I adjusted the reduction to make sure it was flowing very well. It is flowing better now on the second coat as I've reduced it 10% instead of pure. You see on the when the camera gets closer to the spray pattern, it gets eye gloss very fast because it is actually leveling better with 10% reducer with this small little gun. This is an HVLP gun from Kremlin. Actually, this is a VLP gun. It's a very old gun. It's about 20 semi-years old. Well-maintained guns last. So pay the money for them. They're great. But if you don't maintain them, then you're going to lose your money. But obviously, this has won a lot of samples and a lot of little jobs like that, using it day in, day out, right? The second pass of polyaspartic, I made sure that my 2 feet to 3 feet pattern that I'm doing was a little bit offset of the ones we did on the first pass. I didn't want my gun to stop at the same area all the time, so I made sure on the second pass I was moving a little bit further, and then I was okay to overlap. It was just a protection to avoid gun striping and to make sure the gloss was all even as well. I could have gone the other way around, meaning from top to bottom with my gun, turning my spray fan pattern, but it is tough on your body when you actually move from top to down at every stroke. So this way, you know, it's easier and I have more control, at least for me. You see in the light there how glossy it goes just with one coat. It's amazing. These products are very easy to use and the result is amazing. Up to the door, the outside of the door. This is the side door, and a little bit later you're going to see the ramp door, which is going to be done in a couple minutes. I made sure to cross my pattern, so I did one coat on one side, then I flipped my gun, and then I can go the other way to make sure I was crossing my pass and make it an even coat. There is at the end there the ramp door. So same thing, you know, this is a big door, so it's tough to reach out completely, so I'm going to do section by section and cross passing all sections. So I'm doing 2 foot by 2 foot all the way, and then I'm going to flip around, do the other 2 foot, and then I'm going to start the same process but changing angles, so this way I have cross coat as well. Actually, on that ramp, I did 3 passes just to make sure. per coat, there's about 5 wet mils per pass. A pass meaning a double pass, which is 1 coat. There's about 5 wet mils. Looks pretty good. You could see on the tire there, the first coat was a little bit orange peel. This was before me reducing. Now you see that there's no orange peel anymore. It looks like a glass. Pretty happy with the final result. Now I'm scuffing the surface, and that's a couple days later to make sure that the bed liner will stick to the polyaspartic top coat, which is the intention is to have all of the bottom trailer. You see it where I taped the little molding on the top of the trailer is going to be black as well, black bed liner, and all the bottom where the rocks can hit, where normally the abrasion is at the most, that's going to be a bed liner coating, so it should last long. So there's 2 epoxy primer, there's 2 polyaspartic top coat, and now there's going to be 2 coats of bed liner. Well, actually, you're only going to see 1 coat of bed liner because my gun was going bad for one reason. The texture, the rubber texture in the bed liner was probably a little bit bigger than usual because I did the entire frame with that little gun. It went well, and now it's not coming out. I'm having issues, but I catalyzed a gallon already. It's a 3K bed liner, and I have to move fast, so I will move in a couple minutes to the shoots gun, which is made for the bed liner, and spray 20 mils at once. So you should see that. There you go. I'm at the shoots gun, and this is fast. Regardless if I speed it up or not, it comes out. I mean, and there's no tomorrow. I mean, you better move fast, and there you go. So I use 1 quart of material per side to do 2 passes on the bed liner there, the bottom portion. A full gallon is right on there, and it allows me also to recover my white fume that went on the frame, because I didn't tape the entire frame underneath to protect it and keep it black. So when I spray the black now, I just give it a little shot over the frame so there's no white fume left. It's cleaner line, nicer lines. I went back to my little small gun to do the molding on the top, because the shoots gun would apply way too much, and you have no control on the shoots gun. You cannot reduce the debit. It's wide open. So I wanted to have control on it and have a smaller texture as well. So I went back to my VLP gun and adjusted to do the molding. Even if it was slow, it was worth it. And also I didn't want to put too much material on my ceiling as well. Fenders are done, 2 coats of epoxy primer, 2 coats of bed liner. The frame is all done. So next step is to remove the masking and then move on to install my lights, which is not in this video because it's very easy. You know, you take a step bit, a 3/4 inch step bit, and then you put the rubber grommet and you slide your light in there. So it's very easy. You'll see the final result in a minute. There you go. So I think it's clean, it's nice, it's very even, and looks like $1,000,000. I mean, this trailer is now new and better than new because we took a lot more precaution and protection than OEM would give you. So I'm pretty pleased. At the end of the video, when I unveil the finished result, I will go through everything that I paid for, what did I add, and so on, so you guys have an idea of what's the final cost of this trailer. It's not cheap.